Welcome to the Hidden Workforce, listeners. This week, again, we've got our special guest, my sister, Danielle Hillier. Hi, sister.
Hi, listeners.
It's so great to have you here, sister. What are we going to talk to the listeners about today?
Well, it's an interesting subject because it comes from Lisa's book. We're going to talk about neurodivergent students.
Well, what does that mean?
I got this kind of from Lisa's book. Back in the 60s and 70s, mostly students with disabilities, not all, but many students with disabilities were not allowed into public school facilities.
Right, they went into institutions like Hissom Memorial Center, right?
Yes, and so there was an instance where Lisa had said my mom was afraid of a young man who was our neighbor, and I started to really think about it, and I thought, well, back in our parents' time, people with disabilities, we now call them neurodivergent, I started to think that because people were not seeing people with disabilities, you know, when you don't see something, you always think, oh, there's something wrong. Like there's got to be something terribly wrong.
Right.
And so you're not used to it. And I think that's where our parents' generation came from. And when we started to go to school, we didn't have people with disabilities in our school. I don't even know if we had ramps for people with wheelchairs. But in 1975, the Disabilities Act came out and said equal opportunities, and that's when they started making IEPs, individual education plans for children or students that allowed students to come into the school. However, those students were kind of shut off into a room where they were not visible to other students. So still back in 75 and in the 70s up until the 80s, you really still did not see.
Well, I remember in high school that there were special ed students in a line, and they would go past the smoke hole and people would make fun of them.
Oh.
So I did see them in high school.
So the smoke hole is where if you smoked.
My sister would go there, not me ever, listeners.
Yeah. If you were a smoker, you could go and hang out outside, and you were underneath a little enclave where you were protected from snow, rain, whatever. However, I never witnessed that, but you went to school before me. And actually, the room...
And I might have noticed them and you didn't, because like I'm always looking out for the underdog.
Very well could have, and that's very true.
You weren't used to it.
Well, no, and I probably was chit-chatting and didn't even notice.
And smoking.
Oh, yeah. Jeez.
But hey, we were just watching a television program while you've been visiting me, Belgravia, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this boy was having seizures.
Yeah.
And the parents put him away, sent him to Switzerland. But they had a doctor in the community that wanted to work with him and get him outside. But when the community saw him have the seizure, it was like the weirdest thing. So that's what you're talking about.
Yes.
From those days, they would hide them away.
Yes.
So now what's going on?
Now, since I was going to say the 1975 Disability Act came along, and kids started coming, more and more kids with disabilities started coming into the school. And I think once you got into the late 80s, early 90s, it started to become a normal thing. And so if you see someone, like in my high school, who's in a wheelchair, people do not look or notice. It's just a part of our daily lives. So in your book, was my point. Like, I think we've evolved so much because it's now brought into the schools. Kids are seeing it normalized, so there really isn't a difference.
So when we grew up, we didn't encounter children with special needs in our schools.
Right.
Nowadays, kids are coming into school, kindergarten, starting out with kids with special needs,
Yes.
integrated in the classroom with
Yes,
them.
inclusive.
But too, we're starting to see them on television also. We're seeing people with different abilities acting, dancing in wheelchairs, like
The girl
dancing
from
in
Glee.
Ohio. Oh, How to Dance in Ohio. What's the Glee story? I forgot.
Oh, one of the big cheerleaders, Sue's number one.
Oh, yes, with Down syndrome.
Had Down syndrome.
Perfect, that's right.
Yep.
We have so many opportunities, and it's just great because even here on our show, we've expressed how art and theater have really helped our persons with different abilities get more free, more communicative, more integrated into society. So I think that that's a beautiful thing. The Champions movie, Ryan O'Connor, we could just go on, Attorney Woo.
And in many high schools now, kids with disabilities are in the plays. They may be starring in the play or in technology, but they're doing a lot more in theater. And then, with sports, I think kids with disabilities are integrating. Sports has become a very big thing for people with disabilities. I know a young lady.
Outside of Special Olympics?
Outside of Special Olympics. I know a young lady who's in her 20s, and she is going to travel around the United States doing archery.
Oh, wow.
And she would like to become a professional in archery and then hopefully go to the Olympics.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
So yay integration.
Let's talk about your book. I really wanted to talk about Violet and understand a little bit more, because there are people who eat, like they'll pull apart their socks and they eat the strings from their socks.
That condition's called pica.
Yeah.
And that's just people who like to put foreign objects in their mouth and eat them and ingest them. And my biggest concern about Violet was it's just people didn't watch her enough. And so instead of giving her, to my knowledge, care and loving attention, they put her in a crib cage, put a helmet on her head and a suit, like a prison jumpsuit, so that she couldn't get into anything to eat.
You said she had
a helmet with a
plastic shield,
plexiglass, and then there were little tiny holes drilled in so she could breathe.
That's
and
horrible.
It was like padded helmet, like wrestlers might wear, with a plexiglass thing, and then there were shoelaces on the back laced up, and then we would tie it. I hated it.
So nowadays, what do they do for people with pica?
I have not worked in an institution like that, because I don't know how many we have left in the world, but I believe what we do is we watch people carefully.
So somebody like Violet nowadays wouldn't have to wear a horrible helmet.
Well, for her own safety, I'm not going to say that she wouldn't wear it, but I don't think she would be confined to totally being locked up her whole life in a place where she doesn't have access to things, in a crib bed. I think she'd have a lot more freedom today with people looking out for her. There might be more behavioral therapy that she could have that would help her to not eat those things. So I don't think that in today's society we're going to be ignoring people with different abilities in that manner any longer.
So do you think Violet could have had therapy that would help her?
Yeah, I mean, we've made so much progress in therapies, behavioral therapy, communication. We can really talk to people. They can talk to us in different ways too. We can present them with technology, with other ways to communicate. So I believe that Violet would have been a whole different person.
Well, yeah, but the thing where Lisa worked, that was one of those places when you went past it, it was huge. It was a very big center, but people kind of didn't really talk about it. So as Lisa said, when she went to work there, I was like, ooh, Lisa's going to work at a place that we don't know, what's going to happen to her. Will she be safe? Is something bad going to happen? And again, I'm not saying that we were bad people. We just kind of had that thought because we didn't know any better at that point in time. And now, like I said, I think our world's evolved to having more interaction and knowing more about disabilities. And like Lisa said, seeing TV programs and what people can actually do. And what we can we understand more. But when Lisa did go to work for the rehabilitation center, we as a family were nervous.
And I had no idea that you were.
Yeah.
And then I even brought a client home and took him to McDonald's and brought him home to meet y'all.
She did. And it was fine. It was great.
Yeah, it worked out well. And I've never really left it.
No, she didn't. She's always been very much a champion. And if you read her book,
Read my book,
what's the name of the book?
The Secrets of the Hidden Workforce, available on Amazon and Pathways Books. Buy it on Amazon.
Buy it on Amazon. Easy read, fun read. She even talks about our childhood when we were outside playing and doing all kinds of fun things. We had a great childhood, great imaginations. We were able to just...
Part of me feels sad for kids today that don't have that.
I know. And you know what? One thing that Lisa and I were talking about right now, what we're seeing in schools with occupational therapists, the Pediatric Occupational Therapy Journal was discussing how hard it is for occupational therapists nowadays, because kids are, from an early age, 0 to 2, they get the TV and they also get screens, games that they can watch to amuse them. And I'm sure parents are saying, this is so great, they're able to do this.
And they're so smarter than me on this technology. Yeah. We're going to let them do it.
And they are. But what's happening is, even in their toddler ages, when they're supposed to be outside playing in sand, water play, anything that gets their little hands building, like picking a block up, throwing it, squeezing things, using toys, anything toddlers can use their hands for, they're not, because they're using screens and they're not building their fine motor skills. So now
these are just typical children you're talking about.
Typical, yeah. But now when they come to school and they get a pencil in their hand, they don't have the muscular skills to hold the pencils.
They don't have the motor skills to use it. They could hold something because they can hold it, right?
Yeah,
they can hold a phone, but the motor skills to make it happen.
Writing. If you write for a long time, your muscles do get tired in your hands.
Yeah.
But these kids are trying to write. They can hold a pencil, but they're trying to write, and it's not being pressed down hard enough. It's weaker. Coloring, painting. And so what the journal had suggested was give your kids crayons and a coloring book in the back seat. Let them do that too. You don't have to take screen time away forever or anything, but switch it on and off. There's so many gadgets out now for kids that they can play with, squeeze balls.
Yeah, the fidgets.
That one fidget that you have that blows up a bubble and the little balls shoot out.
Yeah.
Kids love that stuff. I had thought that I was gonna take a test for vocational rehabilitation so I could kind of help Lisa out in her profession. However, I don't really know a lot about Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, the different options that are out there for people who have disabilities. So yeah, I was deficient in that area.
But after she read my book, Chapter 5.
Yes, Chapter 5 helped me a lot.
She said I could have passed the test.
I for sure would have done better. But I couldn't read Lisa's book until after I was done studying. And then finally when I was coming here to Tulsa on the plane, I was like, oh, I'm gonna read it. And I read it, like in an hour. That's how easy it is to read.
Wow.
It was fun reading. I wasn't
114
bored.
pages, no big deal.
But it wasn't boring.
It was exciting, so you read right through it.
Yeah, I just read right through it.
Thank you. Okay. Well, thanks for being on the show, sister.
Oh, my pleasure.